Hello, this is AstrologerCoach Sonja Francis, and today we're going to be talking about the upcoming lunar eclipse, which will happen on September 27th at 10:51 p.m. East Coast time in the US, which is also 7:51 p.m. West Coast time in the US. And an eclipse is always a very powerful full moon. This one takes place in 4 degrees of Aries, and it's also a super moon. So this full moon is definitely going to be a very intense, very strong full moon. It's also the last lunar eclipse of the Aries Libra cycle that started in October of 2013. So we've been kind of like exploring this polarity already for a couple of years. And it's all about becoming aware of the roles that we identify with in our various one-on-one relationships with other people, and kind of taking action, perhaps even redefining those roles. So the lunar eclipse, generally speaking, brings attention to our emotional body because it's connected to our soul's journey and to the moon nodes. The emotional body is connected to the moon, it being a full moon, and the soul's journey is connected to the moon nodes, it being an eclipse always happens with the moon nodes connected to the lunation. So we're becoming more aware of what's been suppressed and ignored, and in particular with the lunar eclipse, that's even stronger. And this is a total lunar eclipse, so there's a complete disappearance of the moon that happens with the lunar eclipse, because the sun and the earth and the moon align in such a way that the earth is in between the sun and the moon, and therefore the moon disappears for a certain amount of time. So total lunar eclipses are definitely have some life-changing revelations that they bring us for the next 2 weeks in particular. And it also, of course, is a shift in consciousness with all, which is true for all eclipses. Now, this particular eclipse focuses on our independence. Where do we need to be more assertive? Where do we need to be more accommodating? Where are we being too independent? Maybe where are we being not independent enough? So these are certain questions we can ask ourselves for the next 2 weeks. Another really important question to ask yourself is, what roles or contracts need to be redefined or released? And that's really important because we do have certain roles that we play in our relationships with other people, whether that's being, the husband, the wife, the son, the daughter, the father, the mother, being an entrepreneur or being an employee. These are all roles that we have, that we play within our relationships with other people, right? So kind of taking a look at these roles and maybe even journaling on them and writing them down and seeing, like what comes up for you. What do you believe these roles represent for you, and how do they work for you? Do you want to make a shift, or do you want to keep them the same? Just kind of creating some consciousness around them. So the other thing also to take a look at with this lunar eclipse is to look at the balance between the feminine and the masculine within us, especially not just within ourselves, but also within our relationships, also in the world in general. This is all taking place on an individual and on a collective level, of course. But of course, we can mostly focus on ourselves because that's what we have control over. So we need to start with what's going on inside of us, and then we can expand from there. What's going on inside of us, what's going on inside of our relationships, because our relationships are a reflection of what's inside of us. And in turn, the world, or the things that we see in the world, is also a reflection of what's inside of us. So you always have to start with yourself. You always have to start with what's going on inside of you. Now, in this particular lunar eclipse, there's also going to be an alignment between the Sun, Mercury, and the North Node in Libra. And this calls for communicative, equal, and mutually beneficial relationships and partnerships. So that's something we want to try and accomplish but we need to also go within first and look what's going on inside of us and what do we need for ourselves so that we can have these communicative, equal, mutually beneficial relationships and partnerships, right? So that's the balance that we have to create here with this eclipse. Now, Mercury is currently retrograde, as some of you may already know, in Libra. And it's also squaring Pluto in Capricorn, which is something I already mentioned in my solar eclipse video 2 weeks ago. Now, Pluto went direct a couple of days before this lunar eclipse. And so the energy of Pluto is very much exalted still, but it's now moving forward. It's now more experienced. We can do things in the outer world to work with this energy. So as such, we're definitely strongly invited to go within before speaking and communicating, because Mercury is still retrograde, and to get our own thinking sorted out and reflect on what other people have said to us, whatever we're hearing from other people, to kind of sort that out internally first before we start having a conversation with somebody else. So it's very important to be completely honest with ourselves and others with this combination, and to also find creative solutions when we are communicating to other people. Because sometimes with a Pluto-Mercury square, there can be some power issues, there can be some fear that might come up, there could be some kind of needing to be in control or needing to push things through. So you want to make sure that you choose love over fear whenever possible for these next 2 weeks, and really connect to others and use what you feel passionate about to empower people rather than to disempower people. It's very important to focus on empowerment for yourself and for others rather than out of fear, using force or disempowering other people. And one thing you can remember is what Stephen Covey said about, seek first to understand, then be understood. Because when we first want to be understood without trying to understand other people, we're creating conflict and we're creating force, we're creating aggression. So when it's time to speak, to somebody else, do it carefully from a deeply connected and empowered place. And this may mean that you need to take a pause first. It may mean that you need to collect yourself, center yourself, acknowledge your own fears and resistances first before you can communicate with somebody else. So really take your time. When it comes to communication, take your time right now. The other thing with this lunar eclipse is Mars, which is the ruler of Aries, is currently in Virgo, and it's making a square to Saturn in Sagittarius. So here also we need to stretch and grow when it comes to our daily projects, exploring our beliefs and expanding our horizons. And it might feel like completing tasks right now might feel a little bit more like an effort than usual. And as best as you can, just take it one step at a time. As best as you can, try to be patient with yourself and with others. Impatience is only going to backfire. And remember, impatience is just another fear. It's the fear that we're not trusting in the timing of things, that we're thinking that things have to move faster than they actually are moving. So you're really not being present with what is so. And if something's moving slower, then that is what needs to be. So we need to trust that process. Now, we may also feel a little bit more cautious with that square, Mars-Saturn square, and we may experience a temporary loss of enthusiasm. Maybe we feel a little bit more like sluggish. But creative thinking and experimentation might be really helpful right now. And the upside to this slowing down and taking things a little bit more slowly and more a step at a time, and you're really allowing ourselves to see an authentic, bigger picture here in terms of what's actually going on, that's ultimately going to serve us, because it really helps us develop a more mature expectation and more mature approaches in how we do things, how we take actions. So this is very helpful for us long term. And this is what we have to think about here with this Mars-Saturn transit. It's about the long-term effect that we're having on something. We need to shift our perspectives and our approaches and our attitudes so that we can have better long-term results. And that's what we want to focus on. Now, questions you can ask yourself with this aspect and that you can be with for the next 2 weeks. What single, simple action could I take that right now in this minute that really would move a project forward that I'm working on currently? So really just one single simple action. And then what might you not do until you have a clearer long-term view and have sort of like shifted maybe an attitude about something? You know, what might you not do? And so these are really important questions to ask yourself with this Mars-Saturn square. Okay, now feel free to check out my video about Saturn in Sagittarius that is going to journey there until December of 2017 that I just recorded, because that might give you a little bit more information about how to deal with Saturn in Sagittarius for the next 2 years. All right, now to sum it all up for this lunar eclipse, this powerful full moon is all about actively creating true partnerships that really serve you, that are good for you as well on a collective and on a personal level. You want to make sure that they're healthy and based on the integration of the masculine and feminine energies, and to really see how that is within you as well. And this is really about bringing humans together as opposed to dividing people. So it's really about mutual empowerment. Mutual empowerment is key with this lunar eclipse. So really pay attention to when you do not empower people, when you feel like you're disempowering people, you know, really pay attention that when you feel like you are feeling at the end of that disempowerment, then look to see how you need to empower yourself more in order to, you know, feel less disempowered in the world. But from a place of love. It's always about opening up our heart. So it's kind of like what Gandhi said, you know, be the change that you want to see in the world. Don't blame or look at other people or what they're doing wrong or what they need to change. You look at yourself. Be the change that you want to see in the world. Very important. Now, in the new moon video that I recorded 2 weeks ago, I mentioned that eclipses are times of uncertainty. And this is certainly still true, you know, until eclipse season is over, which will be on October 12th. So until we have eclipse season completed, you know, just remember, don't jump the gun on anything if you can. You know, if you feel compelled to do something out of a place of nervousness or anxiousness, you know, simply watch and observe that urge. You know, unless it's something that happens organically, that is not coming from you, you know, pushing or you know, being anxious, you know, that's okay if something organically happens, because that does happen during eclipse season. But you really don't want to be pushing or forcing anything. And if you are at all ambivalent about any action that you're taking, you know, wait until eclipse season is over, because you may have more information than you currently have. And you may have information that you need in about 2 weeks from now that you currently don't have yet, and so you might not be taking very informed actions, or may not make informed decisions right now to take actions that you need to take. So just be patient as much as you can. Allow yourself to receive the consciousness upgrades. You know, eclipses do bring major endings and beginnings, or if that happens organically, again, that's what happens with eclipses. So just trust that whatever is leaving or falling apart currently is making way for something better in your life. And the more willing you are to change, the easier it will be to go to that next level of your soul's evolution. So that's something to really also remember. Now, the last time we had a lunar eclipse in 4 degrees of Aries, just like we have this year, was back on September 26, 1996. So think back to that time, recall what energies felt what energies felt like back then for you, like how did things shift in your relationships with people, what partnerships were important then for you, or what new partnerships developed at that point for you, what roles did you redefine in your life. And, you obviously you're not going to experience exactly the same things that you did in 1996, but events might have a similar energetic resonance. So that's something that you want to remember. It's just an energetic resonance that we're looking for. Now, if you have personal planets or personal points in 1 to 7 degrees of Aries, Libra, Capricorn, or Cancer, then this lunar eclipse is certainly going to have stronger effects on you. Personal planets are the Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and personal points are the ascendant or rising sign and the MC, which is also called the midheaven or the career point. Now, if all of this sounds a little bit like Chinese to you, feel free to watch my video on how to read your birth chart. That video is available on YouTube or on my website, but you can also email us at info@astrologercoach.com, and you can just put a recording in the subject line, and then we'll send you the high def link to that video with some handouts. The other thing that you also want to do with eclipses is, if you don't have any degrees or in those signs that I mentioned earlier, take a look at the house placement that the eclipse falls into. So where is the moon falling in your chart? Where is the sun falling in your chart? What houses or areas of your life are affected by the eclipse? That will also tell you a lot about, where you need to pay attention in terms of that balance between the masculine and the feminine energies and your relationships with other people, or the relationships that you have within those areas of your lives, right? So again, watch my video on how to read your birth chart. That will give you more information. And you can also always stay in touch with weekly forecasts or daily forecasts with astrology through my Facebook fan page, my Twitter page, but also on my website, there is a page for weekly forecasts at astrologercoach.com. You can also get those weekly forecasts sent to you via email. I have a mailing list. I have 2 mailing lists. One for a newsletter. One is a newsletter and one is the weekly forecast, because I don't want to overwhelm people that really don't want to receive those weekly forecasts. So if you do want to receive them, email us at info@astrologercoach.com and just write weekly forecasts into the subject line. If you only want to receive our newsletter, which only goes out 2 times per month, then just put newsletter in the subject line, and then you'll just receive that. The newsletter is really just my videos that I send out twice a month, and then sometimes I make announcements around retreats that I do or courses that I teach, or changes that are happening in my business. So that's the newsletter. But the weekly forecasts are really like every Sunday evening I send out, what's going on for the coming week. So that's what's available. If you have any general questions about the eclipses, feel free to email me at Sonja@astrologercoach.com. If it's anything personal that requires me to pull up your birth chart, then I would ask you to book a reading with me. Because I need to honor my time, and I also want to make sure that I can answer your questions fully and completely, okay? So have a fantastic lunar eclipse, and you can find all my readings on my website at astrologercoach.com on the services page. See what's available and see what's a good fit for you, all right? Have a good one. This is Astrologer Coach Sonja Francis. Goodbye.